order. The minutes are being kept by recording. Roll call, Val Humble present. Karen?
Karen Myers present.
Mary Helen?
Mary Helen present.
Leslie?
Leslie present.
And Kathy Kellen not yet present, right?
Who's on the phone? Do we know? 971-804.
This is Colin.
Hey, Colin.
Oh, actually, I think 971-804. Yeah, 0608 is me.
Is there any public testimony? Okay.
Wait, I just want to make a public announcement. I just found out that Colin's a new father and he has a baby son born June 6th. And I wanted to congratulate him officially from Penn 2.
Absolutely. He did a lot of
Thank
work
you so
in
much.
that.
I don't know if you can
On
see
the
us,
record
Colin,
and
but
everything.
we're all clapping for you if you can't see us.
I very much
You
appreciate
have two in
it. Thank
diapers
you
now,
very much,
Colin?
Mary Helen. Two in diapers, yes.
Oh, how fun.
So the first item on the agenda is what, contract approvals?
We have no contract approvals for you today.
Okay. And let me switch over. Where is the rest of the agenda? I seem to have lost track of it. What's on the agenda next?
Budget is next.
Who?
Budget.
That's you. Speak up.
Yes, that's me.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are again. I am going to be working quickly through the Penn 2 2021 proposed budget summary Word document that was in your packet. And we'll begin by apologizing. As I was going through this morning, I noticed a bunch of errors in the first part in the summary, the changes, but it all kind of works out in the end. So ignore that part. I apologize for that. And I just want to go quickly through the highlights of. I'm hearing something. I don't know what it is. Okay.
Echo, I wonder if people can mute. There we go. Thanks.
The beginning balance is up over $100,000, $112,000 because of a correction, the change to the prior year's beginning balance to conform with the audit. We also spent a good bit less, $55,000 less than in our last projection. Most of that was for work that we weren't able to complete on OSHA fall protection, on an OSHA fall protection project. Revenue is marginally down since last time by $8,000. Materials and services spending is up about $40,000, a couple of small items, and we've increased the budget to MCDD for staffing costs to conform with what the projection is for this year. The costs are up this year, so we're figuring that's going to be up again next year. Capital is up with the addition of a project to replace motor number 2 at the Schmear Road pump station. This is moving that one up by a year for 21-22 instead of the following year. So with all the changes washing out with the increased beginning balance and increased spending, the net change in reserves is $986. This assumes a 5% increase in the levy, in assessment revenue. Now, Val passed along Mary Helen's request, her concern for an increase, or at least an increase of that amount. I'm not sure which. So I put together this table down below that shows if we have the full amount of the PED costs, the pre-construction engineering design costs for PMLS. If we have it where it's the latest estimate is for Penn 2, if you increased assessment revenue by 5% this coming year, you would need to continue to do that for 3 more years and probably a little less, but by then the world will be different. in the 5th year. If you increase 3%, you're going to have 3 years of 6% increases. And if you don't increase it at all, you'll have a couple of years at 9% and then a 5%. We have recommended and included in the proposed budget a 5% increase because it seems the most prudent and the most stable. But you know, it's the board's call as to how you want to deal with that. So I think this is the main issue, unless there are any lingering issues over other parts of the budget that we can address. And that's all I got. I'll kick it back to the chair.
The reason our PEN 2 fraction of the PED costs is higher than our normal fraction is because the amount of work is larger in PEN 2 with the raising of Marine Drive and Bridgeton. Is that basically it, or do you know how that was parceled out?
I'm going to let Colin address that.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yes, Val.
Welcome back to work.
Yes, that is correct. That there is. Are you guys hearing a lot of feedback?
Yes.
Let me try that again. Everyone could. Thank you. So yes, and I think it's important to note that right now for the PED costs, there's 2 separate PMLS costs that we're looking at. For the PED costs, which are sort of in out years, the numbers, the board still need to have a discussion and actually make a decision on allocation. So we used a methodology that basically took a look at what both the actual costs for the work in PEN 2 would be, and then it's also a function of the benefit, the flood safety benefit to the actual properties and the value of the properties in PEN 2 that's received. So that, in a way, is a placeholder, but it's the same methodology that the Army Corps of Engineers used, and so that's sort of how they assess the benefit cost ratio and how that really affects PEN 2. So there's a lot of work that's being done in PEN 2, but there's also a lot of properties that are being benefited. So that is how for the especially the out years and taking a look at the costs on your assessment and potential increase in the assessment, those are the placeholder numbers that we're using. We are in the process of laying out basically a number of conversations with the 4 boards so that there can be a consensus on what allocation to use. For the time being, we recommend using that number because it's similar or same as the one that the Corps uses.
Thank you, Colin.
And I guess just one more piece. In your budget for this year, the PMLS costs, those are using Table 1 levy allocation. So it's a slightly different allocation. And that's what we normally use for things like Levy Ready Columbia and other things that are related to the levy system. So slight difference on that. Well done, thank you.
The other item that I was a little curious about was how our building from MCDD went up an additional 25%. The 200,000, as you say, that's what it looks like it's going to be this year. What were most of this additional hours for? Do you know that, Casey?
I don't. It's just basically a compilation of staff hours, time that people have spent working on PEN 2, as how they reported on their timesheets from week to week.
Okay.
I don't have a breakdown.
Okay, for purposes of the minutes, I noticed that Kathy Cullen has now joined us. So let the minutes reflect that.
Just
The
want to
other
ask you,
issue-
Bill, do you have any additional detail about why the staff costs went up from a project base?
I just thought if it was known, I'm curious about it, but I don't require an itemized thing. Does any of the other board members concerned that they want to see why more staff hours were expended this year than budgeted?
No, I have a question, but not about staff hours.
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
Okay, mine is back to my original 10,000 foot level. Why do we want to increase costs during a time when people are struggling financially, when we don't, I'm going to say these are my words, really need the money, when we have a balance of over $100,000. I, I struggle with that. We have a budget, we have a large, yeah, I'm getting feedback too, so maybe it's me, I don't know. And I don't know sign language, I could put little signs up. But if we have a large ballot, one of the larger of the 4 drainage districts, people are financially, a lot in our Penn 2 district are financially struggling. Some have actually gone houseless because they can't afford the rent or their mortgage. And I just feel compelled to support any increases when, in my view, or somebody, Casey or Jim, can convince me otherwise, that we need the money just in case.
Okay, so you're reinforcing or repeating
Yeah.
your previous concerns.
Yeah,
Thank you. You're not asking for any decision at this point, are you, Casey?
It would be best to have a tentative decision because you're voting on the budget finally to approve it next Tuesday.
Ah,
And you don't have another meeting between now and then.
okay.
So-
Karen, I noticed you nodding. Did you want to make a comment about it?
Yes, absolutely. I think we need the reserves, not because we're afraid of a massive thing, but because we have a massive bill coming due. So what we're doing is taking a little bit more from each taxpayer to put in that pot so they don't get hit with a monstrous increase. It's easier. As a landlord, it's easier for me to increase the rent 3 or 5% every year than to give them a 20% increase, which then they're gone. But of course, homeowners aren't going to bail, but the cost of living is going up every year. We need to at least keep current with the cost of living.
Thank you. Leslie or Kathy, do you want to say anything? Do you want, Casey, do you need a formal vote or just want a sense of the,
I don't have to have a formal vote, but it would be good to have a sense because we want to bring to the board next week the budget that you will approve and not have to, you know how these format meetings are at the end of the year with approving 5 budgets and IGAs and all of that. So if the board has already pretty much determined what its majority position is, we can bring that to you and you don't have to spend your time, everybody else's time debating it again. This is kind of what this meeting is for.
okay. Let me just say, I have been persuaded, although I'm inclined toward Mary Helen's position initially, that maybe it's better to keep it level. So I would support the 5%. I gather Karen would support the 5%.
Yes.
Leslie, Kathy, what do you? Kathy's nodding. You would support the 5%. How about you, Leslie?
You're on mute, Leslie.
You're muted, so we can't hear what you're saying.
Reluctantly, I would support a 5%, very reluctantly.
and I'll go along with it. I mean, Karen's point's well taken, but maybe we can revisit this next year. I mean, I don't know. The huge bills, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, the huge bill that Karen referenced is 5 years out, right?
No, the huge bill, the big bill starts next in 22-23. The
Okay.
PMLS work starts year after this one you're dealing with the budget
Okay.
for and goes for 3 or 4
Yeah.
more years.
And I don't want to beat this into the ground. My property tax is something $180 something, and 5% of that is okay, and the homeowner. So I'm convinced I'll support the 5%.
Right.
Okay, you have your
I do
information.
have my direction.
Okay.
That's really all I needed as far as direction from the board. If there's any other questions or concerns, I think now's the time to talk about them. What will happen next Tuesday at the format is I will, for all the boards, I'll bring you the budget that you have all at least tentatively agreed on. Note any changes that have happened between when this went out a week ago and next week. There should be none or minimal changes. And then we will formally vote. You will formally vote on your budget and the others will vote on theirs.
If I can, I just would like to say, I hear the concern about costs, and we're going to be working really hard to save every dime we can, every place we can. So thank you for raising those issues and speaking up for people who need that voice. I'm grateful to you, and we'll be mindful.
Okay, if that's all you have, Casey,
Yes.
next
Thank
item on the
you.
agenda is Bill with the capital improvement plan.
Correct. Good morning, all. In your meeting packet is a complete package of materials for the capital improvement plan. Recall this is a similar document to the budget in which each board approves at their final meeting in June, which is next Tuesday. So I'm forwarding this to you today to make sure that you're comfortable with the contents and to ask any questions you might have about the documents. For those who have been on the board for a couple of years, the format probably looks very familiar. There's 2 or 3, looks like there are 3 pages, sorry, 3.5 pages of text in the main body of the reports. And then 2 appendices. One appendix is the table of the CIP schedule and budget over the next 5 years and a glimpse of the costs in years 6 through 10. In addition, there's a second appendix that includes 1-page summaries of each of the projects that are listed in the 5-year horizon to give you some idea of what each project entails. So page 1 provides just some background about the district and what the CIP budgets are, as well as for next year's capital investments. Page 2 represents a description of the steps that staff takes in order to identify a prioritized list of capital projects, which then influences the CIP schedule seen in Appendix A. Note there is sort of a two-step approach for weighing projects. One deals with 4 criteria based on flood risk, emergency preparedness, operational efficiency, and asset integrity or dependability. And then projects are ranked based upon those scores. And then the next step is to consider some additional added value criteria that are listed in step 3. And that information at this point is more qualitative, but we are recognizing that projects do have benefit beyond those 4 criteria in the previous step. And if a project has one or multiple benefits that are listed in step 3, we examine that project with other projects that are ranked in the same area or same value. And so if there are 3 projects that are ranked close to 65, for instance, and one of them happens to have several more added value criteria benefits, then that project will be bumped up a little higher than the other 2. So it's a refinement, if you will, of the first efforts to prioritize projects. The final step to finish the priority list is to identify any projects that have immediate regulatory compliance or partner financial support, and those get bubbled up to the top when those are identified. So page 3 represents the highlights of the 5-year plan. we've talked about, and it looks like I need to make an update here, but we talked about what's going to be in the first year's project. I need to add a third bullet to include the Schmier Road pump station motor replacements. But the remainder of this page talks about the differences between the 5-year outlook from last year to the 5-year outlook that you're seeing today. There are a couple of ongoing projects, and so those costs during the 5-year outlook right now have dropped a little bit because we made progress on both of them last year. We've talked about the motor replacement already, as well as the PMLS projects. Page 4, I'll highlight 2 things that are probably are new this year to you. One is a SCADA system upgrade. This is, I think I may have mentioned this last time. It's a similar, the phrase is similar to what you may have seen in past, but instead of focusing on the communication system, which we recently upgraded, the radio telemetry work, what we're upgrading now is a unit inside the pump station that receives those radio signals and then converts them to action by the pumps and the motors. So those are program logic controls, or PLCs, that need to be upgraded or replaced because the current ones are no longer being supported by the manufacturer. And when they go down, we have no option to replace them as is. So. And this is a cost that's associated with your 2 pump stations. Those in MCDD are much higher because they have several other sites, and the other 2 districts are adjusted accordingly. The last item here is the Northeast 13th Avenue Pump Station Access Road Improvements, a super long title for basically an access projects. For those of you who have went out and seen the Northeast 13th Avenue pump station adjacent to Fazio's property, we drive through that property and their business where they're staging soil piles and other material. And it's accessible, but it's a little tight getting through the area with larger equipment, particularly when it's wet. So we have had conversations with the FedEx property, which is on the west side of your property where the pump station is, and they're willing to give us access through their property to the pump station. So
Bill's understanding it. We had to dodge goats when he took me in for a tour. Which
literally,
was
yeah,
fun,
this time,
but...
yeah. So he had that full experience when we visited there. So we'll need to make some, so there's an easement issue, not issues, but there's some easement steps with FedEx that we have to deal with, which is not going to be a problem. But we need to make some improvements to on your property to make sure that the heavier trucks can get from the FedEx property to the gate where the pump station is. So there's some work to make improvements to the surface of the ground to make that happen. It's likely going to be gravel. We're not interested in putting more pavement out there if we can avoid it. So that's the envision. So last thing to note here is that we had assumed an escalation, an annual escalation amount, and so for the CIP. Normally, it's about 4% based on our research, but from what we're seeing, the costs are going to be higher over the next couple of years in particular. And so we bumped up the escalation estimate to 4.5% for the first 3 years of this outlook. So years 2 and 3 in particular the total cost will be a little bit higher than the 4% amount. Appendix A is exactly the same as what you saw in your previous meeting in late May, with that one exception where the Schmier Road pump station motor number 2 will be replaced. So that's $63,000 that we moved up from FY 2023 to FY 2022. Excuse me. And then Appendix B shows each of the projects, a graphic of where it's located or the actual physical unit, the CIP ranking and the criteria scores, as well as some basic information about each project. So again, this is a type of document that we hope that you feel comfortable with and are willing to approve during the format meeting, along with the budget. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about them.
I note that I'm being told that there's 9 minutes and a half left in the meeting.
Okay.
So are there any questions that would warrant using some of those time?
I'll be brief. I think the document I don't have in front of me because I only have my tablet and I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to bring it up and look at it. And printing all of that takes up a lot of ink and paper. But my question is, with the FedEx property, is that including the conversations you've had with Dick Schaefer about the other property? Because part of what he was asking about was road and access. So I didn't know if that included that piece of it.
Yeah, that's a good question. It turns out it does not.
Okay.
The easements we're talking about, access, is really on the east side of the FedEx property. And Dick Schaefer's conversation with us deals with the west side of his property, closer to MLK. And so what he is interested in exploring is whether there could be a crossing installed over the ditch between the two tax lots.
And that would be at the cost of FedEx, right?
I don't know the answer to that. It's a
Okay.
cost to the developer, not to Peninsula.
Well, yeah, okay. So at some point, I'd like to know if those could be coordinated as opposed to two separate projects, and if that would be any cost saving involved for everybody.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah, I think the easement concept for both could be coordinated that way. That's a good point, which I haven't considered. Yeah, so let me talk to the other staff and make sure and see if there are those opportunities. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay. One other quick question. The guy that, and his name escapes me, but I call him a sandbag man on South Shore.
Yeah. Yes.
Did we incur any expense from him, or do we just want to let it go away?
We have not incurred any additional expense from him based on our last conversations. Recall that the City of Portland BES contributed money to the last response we had out there to lower the water level. We still have money left from the city.
Oh, okay, good.
For any additional responses. So the short, sorry, that was a long answer, but the short answer is no, we have not incurred any additional expenses.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we get the easements documented, so we're not coming back years later and redocumenting the easements, but.
Agreed, we have the same
That's
interest.
If that's it, Bill, I see we're down to 6.5 minutes. We have new business still on the agenda. So to avoid restarting this meeting, is there any new business? None?
Sorry,
Is there anything else?
well, I have
Emily.
one quick thing, and I think I can do it in 2 minutes. When a property owner is going to attempt or tells me they're going to attempt to work on the levee, how best do I report that?
Yeah, let me see if I can field that one. Why don't you have them contact me?
Okay.
Or if they do it by email, our
Okay.
Our email for those type of requests is reviews, REVIEWS, at mcdd.org.
Okay. I don't want to say any more in a public record just because, and I can explain more to Jim when we have lunch, but I just wanted to sort of put that out there for other board members that might be approached.
Yep.
And,
No,
and you're always welcome to send people to me, and I can help concierge them. Happy to do that, and I think Emily can do the same. But Bill is great for these sort of development related questions. It's ultimately going to end up in his shop anyway.
And most of them will be able to see through the city of Portland's permit system. But things like a new fence that don't require permits and some other activity, yeah, please have them contact us sooner than later. Thank you.
And I want to welcome Jim on board and appreciate having an opportunity to chat with you on the phone.
I think I've met with all of you except for Kathy, and we'll get that done. And thank you all for making time for me. And Mary Helen, I'm looking at lunch tomorrow.
Anything else anybody wants to say before we end in time not to have to
Yeah.
restart the meeting?
I'm counting on next week lunch, not tomorrow.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, I confuse easily.
Me too. And the last thing I want to say is on the larger PMLS cost, we're going to have a lot more conversations about how we allocate those. And I appreciate Colin working really hard to provide a great framework, but there's a lot of interest in that on the board and more to come.
Thank you all for making it and for tolerating us hurrying through it. And the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.